Hey guys, it's Sam for Digital Meat again, and in this tutorial I'm going to be going over the new object tracker in Cinema 4D R18. Now you're actually looking at a video that I made to promote this tutorial. So it's an example of, well, not only object tracking but motion tracking as well. So if I start the video again, okay, we can see that we've got a scene that's been motion tracked. So we solved the camera and there's objects in the scene, but not only that, but independently of that motion track, we've tracked this this plane object. So now I can have 3D objects follow this. So we've solved that object. Now I've previously already done a tutorial about motion tracking, so I don't really want to get too bogged down in that. So what I'll do is I'll put the link to that tutorial in the description of this video. So if you're not familiar with motion tracking, I suggest you go back and take a look at that, because the object tracker is tied to the motion tracker. But there are some distinct differences between that tutorial that I did before about the motion tracker and the one I'm about to go through. So I just want to jump through and go through those differences. So let's get started. I'm just going to load up my first scene and just go through what I did for the motion tracking very, very quickly so we can get to the meat of it. I suggest you don't skip ahead because there might be something important in here that you may need to know for later. So just a quick rundown. I loaded my footage into the motion tracker. So this motion tracker object, I loaded my footage in as a sequence. For some reason, Cinema 4D prefers a image sequence to an actual video file. You'll find that you get better performance. So I took this piece of footage into Premiere Pro, shat it out as a load of PNGs, and then loaded it in. Now obviously, it being a PNG sequence, Cinema 4D won't know at what frame rate it's meant to be played back at. But I know I recorded it on my phone at 1080 resolution, and the frame rate was 30 frames a second. So what you need to do is go to your project settings and just make sure that it's the FPS is 30, and then when you bring that footage into your motion tracker, it will automatically be set at 30. Then again, if you recorded it at 24 or 60 frames or whatever, just make sure that your project setting is set to whatever your footage is, and then drop it in. Anyway, so after I got it in the motion tracker, I want to go over masks with you. So let me open up another scene file, and let's go to masks. Okay, so let's click on the motion tracker. In your footage, you might want to auto track it. So once you've got all your footage in and all that kind of stuff, let's have a look at the 2D tracking. We've got a couple of tabs there. We've got auto tracking, manual tracking, and options. What you may want to do is go to auto tracking and say let's have 1500 tracks in there. Again, this is in my older tutorial, so if you want the details, have a look, and then auto track forward. But the problem with that is, with a scene like this, if I go forward, there gets to a point where if I populated the scene with a load of auto tracks, it would be all over the entire scene. And then when we get to here, my hand comes into shot, and also the plane then starts moving. So if you're trying to solve the camera and the scene first, you are not going to want moving objects in there, or else you'll get it won't solve. Basically, you won't get a solved camera. So what I did was I created these tracks, and all you got to do to do that is select your motion tracker, right click on it, go to motion tracker tags, and click the mask constraint. Alternatively, you can click on the motion tracker and go to the motion tracker drop down up here, and then there's a create mask. Once you click that, you can then click in the scene and it will create points for your mask, and then basically you can animate this. So if I choose my move tool and move some of these points, let's say we want to keep it around this dot here, okay, and then we'll move forward. You can see it's no longer over that dot, but if I move the points to be round it, it will make keyframes for the points, so it will blend between that, kind of like After Effects in a lot of ways with their masks. So you can animate masks around everything, and that's pretty much what I did for my plane and my hand. And that is primarily just for auto tracks. Now, I didn't use auto tracks in my scene. I just wanted to demonstrate that if you did want to use auto tracks, this is what you'd have to do. And I can demonstrate that here, actually. I'm going to get rid of the last mask I created. If you click on the mask tab, you can see that I've excluded, it's set to exclude from mask for both of these. So if I go to the motion tracker and then go to the 2D tracking, automatic tracking, and then say create a load of auto tracks, you can see they're created everywhere apart from where the hand is and where the my tracking plate that I made is. So if you're using auto tracking, use some masks to cut these out. It'll make your life very easy. But like I said, I didn't use auto tracks. I used manual tracks. So let's have a look at that scene. I really just want to get the motion tracking side of this out of the way. Okay, so these are my manual tracks. So I place these. You can place manual tracks by selecting the motion tracker, go into 2D tracking, and control. So say I wanted to track this feature here, control click. Okay, let's line this up to the feature. This defines the size of the feature that you're trying to track, and this defines the search area, how far it should look for that. So you can create a track like that, right click and then say track forward or backwards or bidirectional if you created it halfway through your timeline or whatever. So I'm just going to go backwards to where that didn't exist anymore, and you can see that all my tracks are here. I think I've got about 62 of them. And you can see that they track with the footage, and it's from these tracks that the camera is going to get solved. You'll notice that I've actually got some tracks on my object plane here, and that's absolutely fine because the object, the plate is static at this point, so it can still help work out the scene. It's only when it starts to move that you'll have a problem. So you can see that what I've done is I've trimmed the track. When it gets to close to moving, I've actually had this go red, and you can do that by right clicking and saying trim track, and it'll get rid of it or turn it off. And then when it starts moving, none of the tracks on that plane exist anymore. So you can see how that would help you. Okay, so then after that, I solved the scene. Again, this is just going over this very quickly because it was included in the last tutorial. So I'll go back to my manual tracks quickly. So after you've got all your tracks in the scene, you go to Reconstruction. The solve mode, I've got full 3D reconstruction because the camera's moving in all kinds of different ways. The camera settings underneath I've set to unknown but constant. So this is basically asking, is the focal length of the camera changing? Are you zooming in and out? So this is like well, I know that I'm not zooming in and out. I know my camera's moving forward and backwards, but there is no focal length change due to, lenses or anything like that. So if you don't know whether there was zoom on the footage, just click unknown. If you know that the footage wasn't zoomed, but you don't know the focal length, it's unknown but constant. And if you know both, what the focal length is and if it was constant, you can click that one. Anyway, after that, hit the Run 3D Solver, and then down here at the bottom, you'll see it saying, solving, and it'll have a progress bar. After that, you will get a scene like this, solve camera. Okay, so this is my camera that's been solved. And again, if you look at the other tutorial that I did, we can orientate the scene so it actually matches the footage with motion tracker tags. These, position constraint, vector constraint, and a planar constraint. Again, they were in the previous tutorial, go check it out. but what you'll end up is this. So you can see the grid is aligned to the footage. The camera's been solved. And also if we come out the solved camera and have a look at it like this, you can see that all the tracking points are actually laying on the same plane as world space. So everything's lined up and we're all good. Now, this is where the object tracking stuff comes in. We've got there. Okay. So one thing that I will say, and it's very important, if you click on the motion tracker and go to the Reconstruction tab, lock solved data, because when we start adding new tracks for our object, if this isn't clicked, if this isn't checked, it'll assume that they're new tracks for the motion tracker, and it will automatically get rid of these user features. In fact, I can demonstrate that now. I can take off the lock solved data. We'll go up to our plate where it starts moving. We'll go, right, let's create a track on the corner of this X here. Now watch up here, the user features. When I create this, bang, disappears. It sees the number of tracks has changed. It's gone. You've got a new track. Therefore, this solve is no longer relevant. Excuse me. And you don't want to lose your solved data, especially if it's a good, camera solve and all that. So that's why you should, before creating your tracks for your object, make sure you lock your solved data on the motion tracker. Okay. So let's open that back up again then. Lock solved data in big letters there. Okay. So here we are. Here's our scene that's been figured out. And something else to note as well, that if you click on your solved camera, you'll notice there's keyframes on every frame from 0 to however long your footage is. If you've got a gap there, so say you get up to a certain point and then you've got a load of missing keyframes, it just basically means at that point in the footage, it didn't have enough good tracks or information or anything like that to actually solve the camera properly for that time segment. So if that is happening, I suggest you go back and make more tracks and solve your camera again. Okay, onto the object the object tracker. The reason that I wanted to go over the motion tracker is because they're sort of entangled slightly, and also I wanted to go over a more complex shot, because I could actually have used the object tracker in this scene without actually solving a camera for the scene, for the motion tracker. I could have just tracked all the points on this plate and dumped an object like a box or something on it, and it would have moved with it and it would have been great, and we'd have been fine and dandy. But what if you wanted elements happening around your object as well? What if you wanted 3D elements in your scene and your 3D element attached to an object as well? So I thought I'd do a more complex scene, because then it covers all the bases, and we can take a look at all of that. So the object tracker. Now we've got our scene sorted, what do we do? Well, like I said, first things first, we lock the solve date for the motion tracker. Now, when we create a track, it can't be touched. So let's go back to the 2D tracking. Let's see, let's go to the end of our manual tracking list, and we can see that the last one is user 119, and that was used to solve the camera. So let's, for argument's sake, go to our plane. It starts moving at, I think, 400. Yeah, okay, cool. So basically, I'm going to choose the corner of this and make a note of the number of the first track you put down. Mine's user 122. I'm going to make this search area slightly bigger, and I'm going to use the edge of this X, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to track forward. So as you can see, it's processing the frame at the bottom. Okay, it's finished processing. So now it's tracked the edge of that X, it's moving with it, and it will probably lose it like my other manual tracks did, and it does. It loses it there. So you can wait until it loses it. So go back to the last known good one, grab it and just sort of put it back on the corner of it, it'll recalculate again. And you're going to need to do that many times. You're going to have quite a few tracks on this plane. Now there's two ways of tracking an object. I'm going to go over them in a minute. But basically what you want to do is get all your tracks on your object plate, or the object that you're tracking. I suppose what I'll do is cut the video here when I've got my tracks done for my object, and I'll be back in a second. Okay, I've finished doing my object track, so I'm just going to scooch forward in the scene. Okay, so you can see that we've got a load of tracking points here that are moving with my object now, and if you remember rightly, I think it was 122, 119, where's that? Where's 119? There we go, it's there. Okay, cool. So 122 down to 137. So I've got, what have I got here? I don't know, 9, 12, 30, 40, maybe 15 tracks there. And you can see they're all highlighted, and if I scooch along, they all move along with my plane there. Follow it really nicely. Oh, cat's leaving. Okay, so they follow it really nicely, and you know, they're good tracks. They all last a long time as well, and I've even tracked them back to the beginning as well. Okay, so the thing is, how does Cinema know that these tracks are associated with an object and not just with the normal motion tracker? Well, one, we've already got our solve from our motion tracker that we locked down. We locked the solve data, so it is not taking any of these new tracks into account and therefore deleting our user features. We've gone over that, but how do we assign these to an object? Well, what we've got to do is we've actually got a create an object tracker. So if you go up to the motion tracker menu here and go down to object tracker, it will create this object tracker. Now you'll notice, you know, we've got a few tabs: basic coordinates, just like any other object. Then we've got a trackers tab and the reconstruction tab. So in a lot of ways, a lot like the motion tracker. Let's go back to trackers. First field, it's saying what is the motion tracker that this is related to, and this field's already been populated, and that's because we've got a motion tracker in our scene already. When we created the object tracker, it went, oh, there's a motion tracker, and just dumped it in there. That should always happen. There's no reason for it not to happen. I'm not sure if it gets confused if you've got multiple motion trackers in your scene. I'm not sure why you would, but yeah, so that's what that is. The geometry object, I'll get to that in a second, because there's two ways you can solve an object, and you can solve it via just tracking points, or you can create fewer points. I think the minimum is 3, although I'd suggest you do more, and then overlay geometry that matches the object you're trying to track. What it does is it fires rays from where the camera is into the object, and sort of those rays see the association of that object with the tracking points you've created. So we'll go over that in a sec. Okay, so first of all, we need to let Cinema know that these tracking points here are relevant to this object. So what you want to do is go into your motion tracker, go to the 2D tracking, select all the tracks that are to do with your object, and so they're highlighted like mine are, and then go into the object tracker and the trackers tab, and then you've got this button at the bottom that says assign selected. Now all of these tracks are now assigned to the object tracker, and you can tell because when you've got the object tracker selected, anything associated with it will be this, I don't know if you can see on the video, but they're this kind of light blue, and everything else is greyed out, all the other tracks. And if you select the motion tracker, all the ones that were greyed out are now light blue, and you know, vice versa. So that's good. So right, let's get onto the solving then. Right, there's two ways. Now there's kind of a reason why I wanted to do the motion tracker first, solve the camera, all that kind of stuff. And it's because one of the ways of solving an object depends on the fact that it knows the camera's focal length. So once you've solved your scene, there we go, we've got this set focal length that's constant, and you know, you can see it in the scene here. And to solve an object via geometry, the object tracker needs to know the camera's focal length. So you're going to have to either input it manually yourself, or if you don't know it, solve the camera. So there's two ways of doing this. So I've got all my assigned tracks in my object tracker. You go to the Reconstruction tab even, and you can just run the 3D solver for the object, and it will basically go through and it will figure out, purely based on these null points, what the object looks like. You let that run through and it will solve it. But it has no information about how big the object is, how far away from the camera it is. So basically what you have to do is the same thing that you did with the motion tracker. If you looked at the motion tracker tutorial that's in the link, you've got a position constraint, you've got a sort of vector constraint, so you can define which direction Z. Obviously if you do that for the object tracker, you'll be defining its local Z position. And also, what else have we got? A planar constraint, so we can say, you know, how is this orientated, which way's up, basically. So you'll have to do that for the object tracker. Now, I actually solved this scene that way. I didn't get a very good result. So what I did was made a few more tracks, so, well, this number of tracks, and you can do it via a geometry object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select a plane, create a plane even in my scene. I'm going to shrink it down to 20. There we go. Okay. Now this plane has been created at the right place because from the motion tracker we actually made sure that our scene was orientated and all our scene tracks sit on the floor. So we know it's at the right height. I've just got to match the orientation. So I'm just going to scooch this round, like this. Try and get it to match. Excuse me. I'm just going to move it down like this. Move it over like that. There's one thing to note is when you're doing a geometry, when you're solving the object with geometry, your geometry needs to cover all your tracks. So if I go to the object track, you can see that I've got tracks on the corner here. In fact, I can select them all to highlight them. So we need to make sure that our geometry is covering all these tracks because, like I said, it fires rays from the camera and sort of figures out the relationship between the geometry and those track points. So, so I'm going to just go over very slightly in both directions. So we know it's sat on the thing, and if we scoot through as well, we can see that obviously it's not in the right place after I've moved it and all the rest of it, but before, when it's static, that's fine. Now we are actually going to have to make this plane a child of the object tracker after we've solved it. So I think it says in the help, let's just go to the object tracker, go down to help. Oh, it's taking its sweet time to open, isn't it? That's nice. Take a drink while we wait. There we go. Right, okay, so if you go to the help, it will give you some tips about the object tracker. But if we go down here, if you want to run a geometry supported solve, which is what we're doing, I found we got better results. I'm going to go to this. Here it explains how it works. Rays will be emitted at the time in the footage as specified above into the scene from the camera's angle of view, and the points of intersection will be calculated with the reference object. I think it actually makes note that it says make a note of the frame in which you started to, in which you lined your geometry up with the with the object. In R18 it doesn't matter too much. If I click on the plane we can see it again, and I lined it up, I don't know, somewhere around here, didn't I? But if we go back to the beginning, you can see that it still lines up because the plane hasn't moved. So that's fine. Now, this is the important bit. We go back to the object tracker and we go to the trackers tab. We don't need the tracks selected. It doesn't matter if they are, but we've got a slot here for geometry object. So we're going to grab this plane and we're going to drag it in. I'm at frame 0 and we know it lines up there, so that's fine. And if I click on this plane and we go here, even though the plane no longer lines up when this thing's moved, that's the whole point of this geometry supported solve. So after the solve, when we make this plane a child of the object tracker, it will follow it based on the tracking points that we made. So anyway, yeah, frame 0, we've dropped the geometry object into here. If you go to the Reconstruction tab, it says settings for geometry assisted object tracking, enforce geometry. Now you notice when there was nothing in there, this was greyed out. Now there's something in there, this is on. And all we've got to do now is click Run 3D Solver, and just like the motion tracker, we'll get something down the bottom here telling us that it's solving. Might take a little while, but I'm going to cut the video here and come back when the solve for the object has finished. Okay, so the object solve is finished now, so you'll notice that just like the motion tracker, we've got our object tracker and user features. You'll notice that the plane is a child of the object tracker now. It didn't do that automatically, I did that. So basically what I did was I went to frame 0, grabbed my plane and made it a child of the object tracker. I didn't do anything to its coordinates or anything like that. I mean, if you add the plane as a child object of the object tracker at the frame, you know, you created it at, it should all be zeroed out anyway. So, okay, let's just go through. So scrub through. Okay, it's not moving. In comes my hand. I start to move the plane, and there you go, it's moving with it. The object has been solved, and job's a good un. So now we've got our object solved. There's a little bit of sliding there. It's not as accurate as I like it, but again, if you want it more accurate, make more tracking points for the object and more quality tracking points for the object. Make sure they're not bouncing around, all that kind of thing. But what this means now is that we can introduce some other stuff. So, okay, if I create a box, before I do mention that, before when I said about solving without geometry, you needed a load of these tags, position constraint, vector constraint, all of that stuff. When you do an object geometry solve for the object tracker, you do not need any of that because it is taking all its cues from the size of the object and its location in the actual world. So it gets all that information from this. So that's another nice feature of actually calculating all this stuff by using a piece of geometry to, you know, a geometry assisted object solve. Anyway, okay, so if I create a box in the scene now, and that is massive, and let's bring it down to maybe 10 by 10 by 10, and just so it's not sticking through the floor, move it up 5, so that should be resting right on the floor now. Let's have a look. Yep, yes it is. Before, when this was 0, obviously it's through the ground plane, but from this view you won't know. And then when you play it forward, you go, oh, my tracker's not working properly. It looks like it's sliding and blah, 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 and all the rest of it. It's not. You just need to move it up. Okay, and now I can put that on top of this object here. In fact, I'm going to hide the plane. And I'm going to make the cube a child of the plane. I'm going to zero it out. You can't see it because excuse me, you can't see it because I've hidden the plane that it's a child of. So let's drag it out of that and make it a child of the object tracker. Okay, so now when we scooch through, that cube should move with it. Yeah, brilliant. And then obviously you can do anything you like to this. So you can animate this cube and you know, well, animate anything really, and you could end up with a result like I got with this animation that I played at the beginning. So something like this. I'm actually going to make this a two-parter because I just wanted to get out of the way how to actually do the object track and make it successful and actually get there. But I'm going to actually go into how I created this scene in terms of how I set up the lighting, the rendering, my render settings, and all of that stuff. So if you just wanted the object tracking part, that's this tutorial. If you want to know the complete picture for this shot, that'll be part 2. So I think that largely covers it, guys. I can't think of anything else that I haven't covered. Let's have a look. Okay, so yeah, so we got up to object solve. All of this stuff is going to be in the next tutorial. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial and there was enough information in there for you. Don't forget, check out the website digitalmeat.uk. If you want to donate, you can donate there on the About page. Also check out the merch store, Facebook page, Twitter. I'll put all those links in the description of this video, including the link to the motion tracker tutorial. Okay, that's it. Cheers, guys. Bye.